Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Corsair Xeneon 34WQHD240-C. If you guys want to check out this exact same monitor, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's talk about this awesome monitor. Firstly, this is a 34-inch ultrawide with a resolution of 3440 by 1440p or ultrawide 1440p. This is also slightly curved with an 1800R curve, which in my opinion for ultrawides is a must. It's very, very slight. This also has a PPI or pixels per inch, essentially how crisp and clear the image is actually going to appear to your eye. This brings it to about 109, and there is a little bit more clarity than you would have on a traditional IPS-based monitor due to a number of factors like the OLED pixels having slightly smaller spaces between each pixel, as well as having a glossy finish, which significantly improves overall clarity. Now, as for the panel type, like I said, this is a QD or quantum dot OLED. This is from Samsung. So Samsung manufactures the panel, and I'm going to get to this in an upcoming video, but I actually recommend that if you want to get these Samsung OLED panels, get them from everywhere else but Samsung. And there's reasons for this in an upcoming video, so subscribe below if you want to see why. But yeah, the nice thing is this is the newest technology, so a lot of things have been worked out with this OLED tech. I personally think it's the best technology currently for gaming monitors. This also has a 3-year burn-in warranty, which is definitely something to consider when getting an OLED. Now for the ports, this actually uses rear-facing ports, which are super easy to get to. I really like that. On the rear right side, you have one USB Type-C upstream with 15 watts of charging. You then have 4 USB Type-A's, all with KVM switches, which is great, and a 3.5mm audio out. Then on the left side, there are 2 HDMI 2.1s, one DisplayPort 1.4, and another USB Type-C. But this USB Type-C has display capability, so you can use this to run like a MacBook Pro or a laptop or something, and it has 65 watts of charging, which is super nice. Now, the big difference here from the quantum dot OLED that Alienware debuted with back in, I don't know, 3 years ago, 2 years ago or something, is not only the technology that Samsung has been able to improve, but it's the refresh rate. 240 hertz here. That is huge. Now, this is also NVIDIA G-Sync certified compatible and has FreeSync Premium, although I'm able to have HDR and variable refresh rate on both on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, so it's FreeSync Premium Pro, but it's advertised as FreeSync Premium. Now, quickly to go over text fringing, if you don't know what it is, on text specifically, especially like black on white backgrounds, the red, green, blue has a certain separation, but you typically only see red and green, which will kind of give like a slight outline. This is due to the subpixel layout on OLEDs being different from typical like IPS panels, most monitors that you've used. But on these latest Samsung panels, really it is a non-issue in my opinion. You can still see it on very small text when you get really close, but at normal viewing distances, I notice none even when writing this review on really small text in Notion. So in my opinion, it's a non-issue. Now, as for console compatibility, this is one of the best ultrawides to use a console with, if not maybe the best ultrawide on the market, to use either the PS5 or the Xbox Series X and S. For the PS5, this is fully compatible at 1440p, HDR, variable refresh rate, 120 hertz all at the same time, so it's fully compatible. It does have the black bars on the side because obviously they're unable to do an ultra-wide resolution. You could stretch it if you want, but that doesn't look great. The nice thing with that is that those black bars on the left and right are true, full, deep, and black, so they're not really, like, especially in a dark room, they are not at all annoying. That's why an OLED specifically is definitely the best for PC and console gaming if you want to switch between those. For Xbox, this is again fully compatible, but with a few asterisks. Because of Xbox's limitation to only do HDR at a 4K resolution, to get 120 hertz variable refresh rate and HDR on all at the same time, all you'll have to do is output a 4K signal, which this monitor lets you do, and then the monitor will downscale to 1440p. So it's still fully compatible. Your output resolution would obviously be 4K, 120 with variable refresh rate and HDR, and then it would just downscale it to 1440p. But yeah, fully compatible with both consoles, which is great. With that, let's move on. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the panel, its beauty, some of the little gimmicks with it, because there are a few. For SDR brightness, this comes in at about 260 nits, which sounds pretty low, but the highlights here do get significantly brighter than this, and I never had a problem with brightness, even in brighter rooms with this monitor. And you guys know, if you watch me for a long time, I absolutely love brightness. OLEDs, even though that 260 nit figure sounds low, an IPS panel at 260 nits and an OLED at 260 nits, especially with a glossy finish, are like no comparison. They don't even look similar. So that 260 nits can seem misleading, but I would definitely try one out for yourself if that is a big concern, because I think that it might not be as big of a concern as you think. Different with matte finishes, like if you guys have seen my LG OLED review, the one that originally came out, that's a different story. Now, for HDR, this is able to hit 1000 nits of peak brightness. That's only in the small highlights. And initially, I did find a slightly lower overall screen brightness when compared to SDR. This is overall screen brightness was lower in HDR. That was my initial testing, but there is actually a way to get a higher overall screen brightness without doing anything crazy like bumping your contrast to, insane levels. There's actually a way to get your overall HDR experience significantly better and brighter. We'll talk about that in the color section, which we're gonna talk about now. How are the colors here? As expected, they are great, covering 99% of the DCI-P3 color gamut. You guys thought I was gonna say sRGB. No, DCI-P3, 99%, that's impressive. And this is also able to output 10 bits of color at its full refresh rate and resolution. As for color accuracy, out of the box, it's okay. The sRGB color profile wasn't super accurate, and the game profile was actually the most accurate, although it does significantly decrease overall brightness quite a bit. Now, the other interesting thing, and this was very interesting, is when switching the color profile, specifically when I went into sRGB, this was the most intense reaction that I got, the sharpness, which on pretty much every monitor I review, I just immediately turn sharpness off because it kind of makes the clarity of the monitor look weird. This monitor is not that. You need the sharpness pretty high on this monitor. When the sharpness is set to 0, which is locked in the sRGB profile, the image looks blurry. You can't identify individual pixels, and honestly, it just looks bad. It looks horrible. I would never use the sRGB profile strictly because of that. It does not look right, and it really just looks blurry. It's kind of weird. I don't know if this is because of the OLED pixels not having as much space in between them, or if this is literally just like a tuning that they kind of messed up, maybe. I'm not really sure, but if you guys do know the reason that's happening, please comment it below, and I'll pin it after checking to make sure it's legit. Okay, now let's talk colors in HDR, because this is maybe, if you're thinking about buying this monitor, the biggest point that you need to watch. The colors in HDR, definitely a big point. They're kind of a problem here. When you set it in HDR, the overall saturation gets significantly dulled. It's kind of like almost gray washed. It's not very pretty, especially when you go from SDR, which just looks absolutely phenomenal and very, very vibrant. Maybe too vibrant to be accurate, but still, when you go into HDR, you don't really take full advantage of that super wide color gamut because it's undersaturated. Now, this is a problem because there are no adjustments that you're allowed to make in the OSD for saturation or white balance or really any other settings besides sharpness in HDR. And when you buy a OLED like this, like one of your biggest things that you're gonna want is HDR. Now, there is a way to fix this. Now, I tested this in both Windows 10 and Windows 11. Windows 11 is better for HDR, and that's what I would recommend if you get this monitor. Just be running Windows 11. But the really, really easy way to fix this without getting a full color calibration tool is actually use Windows HDR Calibrator. And that literally takes 60 to 90 seconds. It's super easy. You're really just setting the brightness levels. I think you only go through 3 of those little tests really quick. And then at the end, there is a saturation scale where you can kind of see what it looks like, or is supposed to look like in SDR, what it's supposed to look like in HDR. Just take that thing and put it all the way to the most saturated, and it looks great. It's a significant improvement. After doing that, the overall screen brightness was significantly elevated, and actually it outperforms the SDR. That's all the time. That's not sometimes when you're in a game, that's all the time. HDR is brighter. That's without cranking up any sort of like contrast. The image still looks great. You still have all of the clarity, but the overall screen brightness is significantly higher, and your saturation is definitely, it's beautiful. It's stunning. 99% of the DCI-P3 color gamut looks great. So if you get this monitor, absolutely do that. In no world should you ever buy this monitor if you are not going to do that. The HDR calibrator is free, and it only takes like literally 60 to 90 seconds. So there's no reason not to do it, but yeah. That does fix the HDR, which is a good thing. Now for contrast ratio, it's obviously an OLED, so it's basically infinite, but one note with that is that these Samsung panels don't have a polarization layer, which means in direct sunlight, the panel almost looks purplish, and that's because it doesn't have a polarization layer. Now, this means that your contrast ratio of your OLED, basically an infinite contrast ratio, is kind of dulled if there is direct sunlight or more light in the room. So if you want those really deep blacks, be in a dimmer or a dark room to get the absolute best picture quality with your contrast ratio. Some people, it really bothers them. For me, it doesn't, because most of the time when I'm gaming and when I primarily want like a beautiful picture, it's going to be a fairly dim room. And this wasn't really affected by RGB. The room doesn't absolutely need to be pitch black. I still have a lot of RGB lights on when I'm gaming, and yeah, it looks awesome. So maybe an issue for you, but I still think that the Samsung panels are definitely the best in the industry right now. But actually, we're reviewing a brand new OLED from LG very, very soon, so subscribe below if you also want to see that. Now, the response time and ghosting is also a similar story. OLEDs are basically the fastest you're going to get. It's as close to perfect as we currently have technological capability to be. So really, it's a non-issue. There's basically no ghosting. For standard build quality, this is where Corsair really had, I think, more of a hand in this monitor directly. And it's awesome. It's as good as you're going to get on any monitor. It's really, truly phenomenal. The bottom part of the stand is made entirely of a silver metal with a nice texture, and literally that piece of metal on the bottom is gigantic. It is wide, but it doesn't take up a lot of like interior desk space, but it just feels phenomenal when you put it together. It's just one single solid piece of metal. It's awesome. The height part of the stand is also nice and wide, so it's super easy to hide cables, and the cable management hole is also high enough that it isn't able to be seen when using the monitor in a normal height. So that's all good things. It looks great like 100% of the time. For adjustments, this has height, tilt, and swivel, which is super nice to have with an ultra-wide. Pair the swiveling function with those ports being directly on the back, and it makes plugging in and out things really quick and easy, which, yeah, that's great. Menu system and controls here are pretty much what we've seen from Corsair, but they have a joystick on the bottom slightly to the right of the chin, which is really nice. It's pretty easy to learn with no learning curve. Personally, I think some of the controls of the joystick should be different, like the LG monitors, which are perfect. So a little bit of a learning curve with the joystick, but really it's easier than 90% of other monitors. And you have a dedicated power button next to that and a dedicated input switching button. And even though they're like not raised up, after about a day or 2 days of using this pretty much daily, I got used to exactly where the power button is and exactly where that input button is. So while it may look like it would be confusing, it's actually pretty well thought out. As for the menu system itself, it's not especially pretty, but it is fairly easy to navigate and customize. Not perfect, but not a sore spot. I just do wish it had more controls, especially in HDR. I think that 32-inch 4K OLED that Alienware made, again, a Samsung panel, did let you have controls in HDR. So I wish they would have done that, but that's really the only thing. As far as Vesa compatibility, this is fully compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mounts. Now let's talk about the most important section of the video: price and value, and should you buy this? Coming in at $1,199, OLEDs are not as expensive as they used to be. And while yes, that is a lot of money, if you were to tell me that that's the price that this monitor, this specs would have been 2 years ago, I would have laughed at you. At this list price, it's a great value. If you can get it on sale, I don't know if it will go on sale, it's very, very new, but it's definitely worth it at that price point, especially because you get all of the beauty of an OLED, the clarity, and then 240 Hz on top of it. And after using the Windows HDR calibrator, the HDR looks great and it's very nice and bright. And after doing that, this really doesn't have any major downfalls at all. If you're looking for a 34-inch ultra-wide OLED with 240 Hz refresh rate, yeah, I highly recommend this monitor. I have absolutely loved using it. Again, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. Again, if you guys do want to hear about why I wouldn't buy a OLED from Samsung directly, even though they're the ones who manufacture the panel, subscribe below. That video will be coming very soon. And my update video on the Alienware 32-inch 4K OLED will be coming soon. I've been using that, I think, for a long time now. I was gonna do a 1 month, 2 month update, but well, a good sign is I don't need to do those updates because nothing has happened, but I will be doing, I think, the 6 month update coming up here in a few days. This is Type C Tech Reviews. Make sure to subscribe below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.